Happy Easter to you and to yours. How you doing? Good morning. It's Easter Sunday morning, the 12th of April 2020. Hope you've had a good weekend. Hope you've enjoyed the sunshine. I hope you've managed to get out and spend a bit of time in the sun. It is the big baldy gammon. Richie Allen with you live from Salford in Greater Manchester, the city of Salford. And I'm going to be looking through the newspapers now and we'll eavesdrop on the mid-morning talk shows here in the UK as well. It's COVID-19 centric, of course it is, but then again, that won't surprise you. But we'll have one or two. We'll have a look at some things, and we'll have an alternative look. We'll talk about things that are not being talked about on UK media today. Welcome to the Easter Sunday edition of Sunday View.
It's the BBG, not the BBC. You're listening to the Richie Allen Radio Show, live from Salford in Greater Manchester.
It's the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Yes, and you did hear that old jingle about Twitter, and I will be reading your tweets as we go along. I know you've got plenty of things to say, so do throw me a tweet, throw a tweet my way, and I'll read them out. How about that? All right. Yes, it's been a nice weekend here at Richie Allen Show Towers. It's been all right, really. Getting out with the dogs and popping to the shops, but other than that, it's been lovely. The weather's been pretty spectacular in the last couple of days. It's supposed to be very nice again today, but it looks a bit cloudy, a bit overcast at the moment from my viewpoint. As I said, I hope you're managing to get out and about and not being too despondent. One or two of the listeners that I've gotten to know well over the years, one or two, maybe three, have sent me emails and they're despairing at the moment, like really despairing. They're really upset at what's happening. And I said to them, look, hang on in there. You're not on your own. I think it's important at this time to know you're not on your own. I used to dismiss that, I used to be very dismissive of this, you're not on your own. I used to think, bit of a cliche. But it's important that as you see through this and it's affecting you, don't let it get down on you and suppress you and become oppressive and push you down, because you're not on your own. Millions of people, maybe even more than millions, are aware of what's going on, and they're looking long into the night too, but don't get too upset about it. It's not over yet, Maybe it's wrong of me sometimes to say, it's game over. Maybe it's not game over. Maybe there are things we can do. Look, happy Easter again. Tommy Lee Jones, by the way, the actor, is a huge fan of the Richie Allen Radio Show, and he sent me this message for you and yours. Fair play to you, Tommy Lee.
I wish to extend to each of you and to each of your families my best wishes for a happy Easter.
Thanks very much, Tommy. More celebrity endorsements as we go along. I'll tell you what we're going to do. Because it's Easter Sunday, we're going to have a tune. How about that? Yeah, I make the rules, so... This is music from Sam and Dave, back with the newspapers on Sunday View. Yeah. Bit of dad dancing. Why not, eh? Sam and Dave, Soul Man on Sunday View with me, Richie Allen. 6 minutes past 11 it is. Easter Sunday morning. Let's have a chat then. I'll tell you what I'm going to do very quickly. I'm going to very quickly run down the headlines on the front pages of the papers. The Mail on Sunday leads with Boris, the NHS saved my life. That's the headline. And there are a series of bullet points on the front page of the Mail on Sunday, which are very funny. The first one says, revealed full inside story of PM's fight for life. Second one, Carrie's love letter with scan of unborn baby. That presumably means that Carrie Simmons got a scan of the baby and sent a love letter to Boris with the picture of the scan clipped to it. And the third bullet point says he was so sick that all number 10 staff could do was pray. Also on the front page of the Mail on Sunday, this Easter Sunday morning, is a picture of Julian Assange, a world exclusive says the Mail on Sunday. And the headline accompanying the picture is Assange fathered 2 babies inside the embassy, apparently.
What kind of fuckery is this?
Yes, Amy, yes, it was fuckery. He was fucking someone. 2 babies, apparently, with a woman who's named. She's named in the story. The fiancé. It's his fiancé, basically. She was coming in, meeting him, shagging him, and eventually getting pregnant. So there you are. So that's in the Mail on Sunday. That's what happens, you see. Unprotected sex children. The Sunday Express. I can't thank them enough. I owe them my life. Boris Johnson. Also a photograph of the Queen. The Sunday Mirror. We're running out of drugs for the sickest patients. NHS. Lots of those stories around this morning. The Sunday Telegraph. Hospitals on the brink of running out of gowns. Hospitals on brink of running out of gowns. Well, just declare the hospitals to be naturist hospitals then. Nudie hospitals. Let's have nudie hospitals. You won't need any gowns. To have doctors running around in the nip and patients and what have you. That's the Sunday Telegraph. The Sunday Times. Now this is interesting and we will come back to it. NHS phone app holds key to lifting lockdown. Mobiles will trace every contact of infected people. NHS phone app holds key to lifting lockdown. Sunday Times will come back to that one. The Observer, as virus death toll nears 10,000, parties unite to demand the recall of Parliament. I do believe that Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is responsible for such matters, has announced that Parliament will sit again on April 21st, I believe. But I'll double check that in a moment. Sunday People. Are our kids' lives not worth saving? This is to do with people being asked to sign do not resuscitate forms. This is sickening. Now you will remember my conversation with the brilliant Hayden Hewitt from triggerwarning.tv, of course from LiveLeak. And I'm sad to tell you that Hayden's mother-in-law, his wife's mum, passed away in the last day or so. I think the lady might have passed away on Friday. So sincere condolences to Hayden and to his lovely family. A horrible thing to be dealing with right now. She was an ill lady, but they didn't think she was gravely ill. And we know about this do not resuscitate because when his mother-in-law, Hayden's mother-in-law, took pretty ill in the care home that she was in, the emergency services wouldn't come out. And the doctor, the GP, said, I'm not going to come out either, but what I will do is send you an end-of-life care package, which is extraordinary. It was an incredible thing to be listening to. And then we found out that in Liverpool and in other places, doctors are saying, we're under so much pressure with coronavirus that if you've got a life-shortening illness, we really don't have time to be treating you. So it might be best for everybody if you sign do not resuscitate forms in the event that you do get gravely ill. Because that would be helpful for us, you see, because we don't have time to treat you. I'm not going to say any more. Okay? Okay. Let's talk about Bill Gates for a moment. Let's talk about Bill Gates. Gates is everywhere this weekend. He has written a column in the Sunday Telegraph today, and the headline of said column is Coronavirus, Bill Gates calls for global agreements on masks, treatments and vaccines. The move comes amid fears that a vacuum in global leadership will prolong the pandemic and greatly magnify its toll. So he's writing in the Sunday Telegraph. Now he also, Bill Gates, appeared this morning on the BBC Breakfast Show. Bill Gates spoke to BBC Breakfast Television this morning, and it was very, very interesting indeed. Let's hear some of it then. This is Bill Gates speaking to the BBC this morning.
Bill Gates, thank you very much for joining us on BBC Breakfast. I just wonder if I could first ask you, how important is it now to have a global response?
Well, I'd say it's critical because the tools that are going to reduce deaths, the drugs, that's a global thing to get those out. And the thing that'll get us back to the world that we had before coronavirus is the vaccine and getting that out to all 7 billion people.
What was that?
What kind of fuckery is this?
Now, hang on a second there, Bill. What did you say there about the vaccine there at the end? It's kind of interesting. What was that?
To the world that we had before coronavirus is the vaccine and getting that out to all 7 billion people.
No return to normal life until we get the vaccine to 7 billion people. Go on, Bill, you mad bastard you. Bill declares himself to be a health expert, and predictably, this goes unchallenged by the totally inept BBC presenter.
When I and other health experts...
What was that?
When I and other health experts...
I didn't catch that, Bill. What was that?
When I and other health experts...
Bill, you're a computer geek, software developer. You're not a doctor, at least not last time I checked anyway. So why are you including yourself on a list of health experts, Bill? Yeah.
When I and other health experts were saying that this is the greatest potential downfall the world faced, going back quite a ways with a speech in 2015 and a New England Journal of Medicine article about the specific thing. So, we definitely will look back and wish we had invested more so that we could quickly have all the diagnostics, drugs, and vaccines. We underinvested, which was my goal, was to get that to happen. We did do CEPI.
My goal. And again, I and other health experts, my goal. There was a time when a presenter would have stopped and said, listen, pal, just as a matter of interest, who the fuck are you? It just occurred to me there. Let me just call a halt to the interview. Who the fuck are you to have goals to get drugs and vaccines out? Who are you? Aren't you that geek that gave us Microsoft? Aren't you? What's your interest in all of this? And why are you declaring yourself to be an expert on health when you patently are not? That might have happened back in the day when journalism was a real thing. But now he just gets to waffle on with no interjection from, as I said, a host who is as impotent as a Nevada State Boxing Commissioner. Useless.
Which was my goal.
My goal
was to
me and Melinda
get that to happen. We did do CEPI.
Now, CEPI, he mentions an organisation several times called CEPI. Keep it in mind.
Which helped with some of the vaccine platforms, but not even 5% of what we could have done. Then there's the period where the virus shows up in those first few months. What were the tests prepared? Did countries think through getting their ICU and ventilator capacity up? There'll be time for those postmortems. Very few countries are going to get an A grade for what.
From who? Are you going to be evaluating the world's nation's response to COVID? Really? What does that mean? You're going to be determining which nations did well and which nations didn't do well, are you, Bill?
That scrambling looked like, and now here we are. We didn't simulate this, we didn't practice. So both
That's a lie. We know that to be true, don't we?
The health policies and economic policies, we find ourselves in uncharted territory.
But they were gaming these scenarios last year. But we'll leave that for another day. So obviously the thing to do then is to rush out the vaccine. What will that look like, Bill? This is Bill Gates speaking to BBC Breakfast this Easter Sunday. Grabbed by yours truly. So glad I didn't miss this.
You'll be aware a lot of people in the UK are asking what is a very simple and straightforward question, which is, when will there be a vaccine?
This is what the BBC does. Fox News does it. CNN does it. Well, some people are saying, a lot of people are saying, I have yet to encounter anybody who's asking for a vaccine. You see, these are plays. These are carefully constructed plays. Okay? Dressed up to look like journalism. All of this stuff is all prearranged before these guys sit down and do the interview. All of it. The questions, the answers, the whole lot. Rehearsed. Meticulously. Right? Who's asking for a vaccine?
How do you see that?
Well,
What kind of a question is that?
it's a perfect question because we want to get back to the life we had before coronavirus. And, people are seeing the economic destruction, the psychological stress. This is such an unprecedented, very tough thing to deal with. The people like myself and Tony Fauci are saying 18 months. If everything went perfectly.
People like myself and Tony Fauci are saying 18 months. Now, Fauci is the guy advising the Trump administration. Now, whatever about Fauci, and he's obviously a goon, right? He's a big pharma hired goon, but at least he's got medical qualifications.
Went perfectly, we could do slightly better than that, but there will be a trade-off. We'll have less safety testing than we typically would.
What was that? What was that again? About rushing out the vaccine? What's the trade-off?
Thing to deal with. The people like myself and Tony Fauci are saying 18 months. If everything went perfectly, we could do slightly better than that, but there will be a trade-off. We'll have less safety testing than we typically would have. And so governments will have to decide, do they indemnify the companies and really say, let's go out with this?
Do they indemnify the companies and say, let's go out with this thing, this little syringe full of toxic shit, let's go out with this and stick it in people without properly trialing it? Will governments indemnify the companies? In other words, say to the companies, don't worry, if it kills 2 million people, you won't be sued. It was a risk that we thought we should take at the time.
That, but there will be a trade-off. We'll have less safety testing than we typically would have. And so governments will have to decide, do they indemnify the companies and really say, let's go out with this when we just don't have the time to do what we normally do. So 18 months.
And of course, at this stage, the hapless host, BBC guy, full head of hair, lovely suit on him. Again, he should interject and say, excuse me, Gates, Bill, Mr. Gates, whatever. Are you really suggesting that we get a vaccine out quickly and we trade off the possible negative effects of not trialing it? We trade those off against it working and people getting back to their daily lives. And to help the pharmaceutical companies, Bill, did you just say that governments might consider indemnifying the pharmaceutical companies even more than they have been indemnified historically? Are you really saying that? You mad James Bond villain bastard, the host should say. But of course he won't, because he's a BBC host. You'll never see Bill Gates anywhere else other than a news organisation like the BBC or CNN or C-SPAN or NBC. Because they won't ask these questions.
This is about what we'd expect. We're doing everything we can. We'll write checks for those factories faster than governments can, and they'll come along. It definitely shouldn't be money limited. It should be, all the best constructs, full speed ahead, science limited.
As I understand it then from what you're saying is that it may be that there needs to be some compromise in some of the safety measures that would normally be expected to create a vaccine because time is so crucial.
Yeah, he's not thick, is he?
Well, of course, if you want to wait and see if a side effect shows up 2 years later, that takes 2 years. So whenever you're acting quickly, like during the HIV crisis, they created a quick way of getting drug approval. There is a trade-off there. In that case, it worked super, super well. And here, we will, I think, be able to get some safety indications, but this is a public good. And so, those...
What was that? He kind of trailed off a bit there, didn't he? What did he say there about the trade-off? What did he say?
I think be able to get some safety indications, but this is a public good. And so, those trade-offs, the government's working on a cooperative basis will be involved in the decision to say, hey, the regulator says go ahead, even though you haven't taken the normal time period.
The regulator says go ahead even though you haven't taken the normal time period. Gates, you could imagine spent his childhood pulling the wings and the legs from Daddy Longlegs and crane flies. He is barking mad, Gates. And I can have a little bit of sympathy for him because Gates is the public face of it. There are people in the independent media who want to believe or want to push the notion that Gates is the supervillain. He isn't the supervillain, Gates. He's a front man. He's one of several front men and front women for the agenda. But he's not the man behind the mask. He's not the emperor. I don't believe that he is. It's just my opinion. He's a lunatic, Gates. I think Gates believes all this shit. I've watched him deliver these TED Talks and I've seen him on television. The guy, body language is something I've studied very, very closely over the years. Eye movement and stuff. That's just the tip of it, right? Gates believes this stuff. And that's what makes him invaluable to the real string pullers, if you want to call them that. Mad. Gates. Crazy. We hear a little bit more from him, will we? Let's hear the last from Bill Gates today.
You know, I ask myself every morning, did this really happen? And even though I worried about it, I still find it shocking how tough it is and how hard it's going to be to get back to the normal life that we had before.
On that note, and on that note of normal, do you think things will go back to normal, or is that all changed?
No, once you have a safe and effective vaccine and get that out to almost all of the people on the planet.
Almost all of the people on the planet. 7 billion, he said in the opening of in the very beginning of the conversation. 7 billion. Nearly all the people on the planet have to have the vaccine.
And build the preparatory systems for the next pandemic so you can nip it in the bud. We will go back to normal and economies will recover. But we have multiple stages to go through in terms of until we have that, you know, how much can we open up? How do we help the developing countries? But the economy eventually will go back to where it was. And innovation will help us not be at such a risk in the years after that.
He mentioned an organization called CEPI. That's the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. The Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. Now, often mentioned over the years that the BBC is the enemy of the people. And it is a clear and present danger to the well-being of everybody in this country. It was incumbent upon the interviewer to remind the audience during the conversation when Gates dropped in CEPI, which was founded in Davos back in 2016. It's got a motto which reads, "New Vaccines for a Safer World." It was founded by Gates and his wife and a few others. The interviewer should have made that clear to the audience. He threw in CEPI, and the interviewer didn't even abbreviate CEPI. He didn't even say, well, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, didn't even do that. Useless. The useless interview, right? He didn't. The reason he didn't do that, because everything is Gates. Everything is Gates. You know when Gates says, well, this organisation is doing that and this organisation is doing this. They're all Bill Gates organisations. They're offshoots of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I will go as far as to suggest that the presenter and the copyright editor, I should say the copy editor, the script writers at the BBC deliberately omitted telling people that Gates set up this CEPI, right? They're all these organisations. And what's astonishing about that is, because sometimes when you do this job, and I know you don't do this job, I share as much as I can about what it's like doing this job. Sometimes you're astonished, your mind is blown by the mendacity, by the skullduggery of the national broadcaster in this country. When the Bill Gates interview was recorded Thursday or Friday. It aired for the first time on BBC One this morning at 8:45 a.m. It was the very last item on the BBC Breakfast Show, and It was promoted heavily over the weekend on the BBC website and also on the other BBC radio and television shows. Heavy promotion for it. And it was the final item on today's BBC Breakfast show. What programme follows BBC Breakfast on Sunday? Well, it's the Andrew Marr Show. So 15 minutes after we heard Bill Gates, this is astonishing now. Andrew Marr interviewed Bill Gates' friend and a founding member of CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, a guy called Jeremy Farrar, who's a board member of CEPI, a UK immunologist, and he's a member of various other health organisations. So he's Bill Gates' friend, and he was on the Andrew Marr Show. And the first thing Andrew Marr asks him is about startling news coming out of Korea that the virus might be able to reinfect people who've already had it. This is astonishing stuff, this.
Can I ask you a little bit about what we're learning about the virus itself? Because there are worrying suggestions coming out of Korea at the moment that people having been infected can be reinfected or that it can be dormant and return again later.
I mean, that's just unbelievable bullshit, isn't it? I mean, how convenient. There's news coming out of Korea that if you've already had it, you can be reinfected again, or that it can lie dormant in your body only to emerge at some unknown point in the future. Wow. Well, then it really is the never-ending story then, isn't it? What does this guy say, Jeremy Farrar? British guy, Bill Gates' bestie, involved in CEPI and other organisations that are affiliated with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. What did he say about this news out of Korea that this virus might be indestructible?
Yeah,
he coughed.
We're learning so much about this virus. We should just perhaps remind ourselves we're about 100 days now into the emergence of a completely new human virus. None of us have seen this virus before. None of us have developed any immunity, and we don't know yet how that, after being infected, how long and to what extent any of us have immunity and how long that will last.
How convenient, eh? Surely at this stage, because I do have a lot of listeners who listen with a very sceptical ear, as well they should. Said it 1,000 times. Treat the information you come across on this programme with as much care and consideration as you would do the info you get from the BBC or the Telegraph or the Times. But surely at this stage, even those people have to see now that you are being had. This is monumental bollocks, this, isn't it? Yeah, well, we've never seen anything like it now. Yeah, ordinarily you get a virus and your body builds up antibodies against it because your body's an amazing thing, your immune system, and fights it off. And then you're immune to that. And of course viruses do shift and mutate and all of that, yeah. But this could reinfect you at a later date, or maybe even stay dormant in your body to emerge, and maybe a year down the line, maybe 18 months down the line. Jesus.
And the reports from Korea, I think there's been almost 100 reports now of people that have been infected. They seem to have recovered, and then at a later date they became infected again.
Bullshit. According to who? Where's the evidence? 100 reports from Korea. From who? People got it, they got over it, and then they became infected again. Horse manure. Where's the evidence? Of course, Andrew Marr, Andrew had a stroke, God love him, and we've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe the stroke froze half his fucking brain. Maybe. Jesus, jump in, man. Jump in and at least say, well, that's not the way it ordinarily works with viruses. Why would this one be any different? He just sits there.
It is critical to understand whether those are one viral infection that has persisted in one individual for a considerable time and now has reactivated, or whether they've been infected with a second virus. Either way, it suggests that perhaps immunity in some people is not complete, and that has major ramifications for the ability to make a vaccine and also for the community to be protected against future waves.
I'm going to tell you now, dear listener, you've got to listen to this bit very carefully. This is the only place in the world that you will hear this today. Listen to what he says here.
That perhaps immunity in some people is not complete.
Immunity in some people is not complete, right?
And that has major ramifications for the ability to make a vaccine and also for the community to be protected against future waves.
Yes, I'll translate that for you. It means that everybody in the world will have to have the vaccine. Everybody. Because there are people for whom immunity is not complete. There are people for whom maybe the vaccine won't work, or people with underlying conditions that will maybe prevent the vaccine from working. So you're all going to have it. How convenient for a board member of SEPI, whose motto is safer vaccines for a safer world or something like that. A load of bollocks. What is it again? What is it? New vaccines for a safer world, yeah. It's astonishing stuff, isn't it? Isn't it? But here's what's even more astonishing. Remember, Bill Gates, the last item on BBC Breakfast. This guy appears on the Andrew Marr show. They're both SEPI board members. Gates said, we need to get the vaccine out. We need to maybe have a trade-off between safety and the overall benefits of getting rid of this virus. And ordinarily, to take a couple of years of testing and all of that, we maybe need to ramp it up and do it in a shorter time period, said Bill Gates. And we also maybe need to indemnify the pharmaceutical companies so that they can't be sued if anything goes wrong. Well, old Jeremy here, Jeremy Farrar, Gates' pal, he reckons we might have a vaccine, wait for it, by September.
The Oxford University group that have been working on this now say that there's an 80% chance of having a usable vaccine ready by September. Without going into percentages, does that sound remotely plausible? I know that you're looking at all the different vaccine trials going on around the place.
Yeah, it's my view that treatment and vaccines are really our only true exit strategy from this. We're determined that we do all we can today to save lives, but we're also determined that we don't go through this ever again. And I think the chances of second and third waves of this epidemic are probably inevitable. And therefore...
second and third waves of this epidemic are probably inevitable.
Therefore, having the right treatments to save lives, but also having a vaccine in the future is going to be absolutely critical to prevent those second and third waves. The Oxford group have been working incredibly hard for many years. They've developed vaccines against a number of different illnesses, from malaria. They're working on tuberculosis. They're working on MERS, the Middle East virus that's actually similar to COVID-19. And I think there is a very good chance that they will be able to produce a vaccine that can start to be tested in the summer, and we would know by the autumn of this year whether that vaccine was inducing immune responses in people, and we hope would be protective. But that is the start. And although Professor Sarah Gilbert is absolutely fantastic in what she says, she would also be the first to say we then need to make sure we can manufacture it at scale, we can deliver it to everybody that needs it, and that would be a very large number of people globally, billions of people.
Billions
of people.
Of course, Andrew Marr is again. I know, I do bore myself. You see, I have to do this every day. So spare a thought for me. So while you're yawning and saying, BBG, we've heard this before, listen, just listen carefully. Marr, if he was doing his job, would say to him, Jeremy Farrar, or Sir Jeremy Farrar, if you please, I've got an issue here. If you get some vaccine ready to go in the autumn, at that stage, isn't it true that at that stage, a huge percentage of the UK population will have already had coronavirus? Most of them only suffering very mild symptoms indeed, which they quickly got over. Farrar would have said yes. And then Marr should have said, well, the vaccine then developed for the autumn or the early winter, it'll be useless, won't it? You see? It'll be useless, won't it? This is why the flu vaccine is useless most of the time. This is the BBC, folks. This is supposed to be the standard bearer of global journalism. There would have been a producer on Mars team this morning, I used to produce, who would have said, but sure, by the time we get into late 2020, early 21, according to the so-called experts, most of us will have had COVID and dealt with it. So what use is the vaccine then? But of course, Mar doesn't ask that. Mar just sits there and nods along like a nodding dog. Do you remember them when they used to be popular in the back seats of cars, the back windscreen?
Be able to both manufacture and distribute and make sure it gets to everybody that needs it in a way that is accessible and affordable to them and available.
What's your likeliest option as to when people will actually be able to get a vaccine?
Useless, Mara.
Vaccine.
Well, if we just think that through, that vaccine will be going into volunteer studies in the summer. So
useless.
May, June, July. The results will be available in September, and there'll be a push in September to give it to more people and see is it not just safe, but is it also effective. In parallel with that, and going on through the same time frame, the manufacturing capacity has to be built, or manufacturing has to be available somewhere. We cannot take from other vaccines that are being developed. If we took over the vaccines that are producing measles vaccines around the world or other vaccines, we would face epidemics of those diseases. And as Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccines, has very clearly said, if we do that, we will face more deaths from other diseases. So this is going to have to be done in a completely different way. I absolutely agree with Sarah Gilbert that the vaccine, I think, will be available during the autumn of this year, but that will not be at the scale that's required to vaccinate maybe many billions of people around the world.
Billions of people. So we'll have a vaccine available in September. Would you take that vaccine? Virtually no safety tests whatsoever. Here you are. Here's a syringe full of toxic shit and pus and God knows what else. But take it. Be good for you. You won't get the COVID. And of course, what they're going to do here, and I'm tired of saying this, is this is going to be people's get out of jail free card. That's what it's all about. You know, we'll come back to that in a minute. This notion of voluntary versus mandatory. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. Before we do that, though, let's take a tune. I think I'm going to end up going over the time today, but that's okay. There's plenty to talk about. It's 20 minutes to midday here in Salford, the historic city of Salford. I am Richie Allen, the BBG. Certainly not the BBC. I'll be back with plenty more after this from the Bluebells. Music from the Bluebells, Young at Heart, on the Richie Allen Radio Show, Easter Sunday, April 12th it is. I'll be back with you in about 60 seconds. I'll read some tweets then.
Renowned healer Mark Byersky travels the world to find the most unique and powerful crystals for self-healing. Since the ancient times, crystals have been used as healing tools. They hold a natural healing vibration and are highly charged in positive energy. Mark teaches how to channel the universal energy and transfer it to the crystal to activate its healing power. Each crystal is used for its unique ability to target a different physical or emotional challenge. Mark Byersky is an author, healer, speaker, and founder of the Pure Energy Healing Academy. He shares powerful messages of inspiration and healing on his daily YouTube videos, reaching millions worldwide. Mark's crystals, healing oils, and incense sticks are most sought after by other healers. His collection is available online at www.markbyersky.com. His work is presented through Lemon House, a company that creates and curates consciously made gifts.
Right, very quickly, let me just run through a few tweets there. I'm going to be going over the time, which kind of cheeses me off. I like this to be an even hour long, for obvious reasons. Hi to Liz, to Patrick, to Charlotte. Good morning to Steve. Steve, you bombard me with links, mate, that I'm not going to retweet because I can't read them on air, and I'm not going to read them after. So thanks, mate. If people want to see the links that are being sent to me, because people are sending me links like Steve, and they might be very valuable. do find out what people are tweeting to me. To see what people are tweeting to me, where it says search Twitter, it's a Richie Allen Show, all one word. Put in Richie Allen Show, all one word. Press enter. And you can see what people are tweeting to me. Okay, there's a very good reason why I don't retweet stuff like that. And if you've got a brain, you'll understand why. Hi to Tom. Hi to David. Hi to Chris. Fuck their vaccine and them pushing it, says Chris. Hi to Maisie. Hi to the left hand of God, to Steve. The other Steves are Steve James. To Jason J. Gage, who says we all know the Beeb is the ministry of truth. The propaganda comes before real journalism and the masses believe it. They do, I suppose. The majority of people do believe it. It's still, most people's starting point is, why would they lie? Why indeed. Hi to Mr. Mojo. Hi to David, who says it sounds like Big Pharma are priming us not only for the most profitable pharmaceutical product in history, but that you have to have a repeat booster jab every year. Yes, that's right. That's right. You've got to have the jab to protect those who can't have it, or to protect those for whom it just won't work. That's how they do it, you see. This is beyond mendacious. It's evil on a scale that you couldn't even begin to comprehend. There are people who can't have it because if they got it, it would hurt them. And there are people who can't have it because it doesn't work for them. So you have to have it so that you don't inadvertently infect them. It's insane. It is what it is. Let's return to that story on the front page of the Sunday Times about the NHS phone app. Again, we're back to radio shows that I've done, going back to the Costa del Sol back in the late part of the last decade when I began doing these programs. Astonishing stuff. A phone app holds the key to lifting the lockdown. That's the headline on the front page of the Sunday Times. Ministers have been given the green light to create an app that would allow mobile phones to trace users who have been in contact with infected people, alerting them to get tested. So you get a little text message, or you get an alert, not a text message, you get an alert from your app on your phone. And it tells you that you may well have come into contact with somebody who was infected. Your phone will then tell you whatever measure to take. That measure might be go back home now for 2 weeks and don't go outside, or report to your nearest GP. Staggering stuff. Former editor of the Star newspaper, Dawn Neeson it is, was reviewing the newspapers on Sky this morning, and she was pretty appalled by this.
This is, to be honest with you, I find this quite scary. It's the government have ordered the tech giants to come up with a phone app that is, as you say, the key to lifting lockdown, and it works by tracking infected people. So say you get on a train with your mobile phone, the app that you've got on your phone links into other users on the app on that train, and then it holds your data for 7 to 14 days. And then if one of the other people on that train carriage become infected, the app then warns you that you've been in contact with an infected person. Now, all sorts of questions spring to mind on this one. Really is Big Brother is watching us, isn't it? And of course, it relies on everybody downloading the app in the first place, and how many people are going to be doing that. And also testing. We still don't have testing facilities in this country. That means that we know when we're infected. I mean, some of us have mild symptoms. Is it coronavirus or not? In theory, it's a great idea because it frees us up from this lockdown and we can trace where the virus is. But it is a bit like Big Brother is watching us, monitoring where we go, what we're doing, who we're interacting with. I find it a little bit scary, I must admit.
Yeah, she said in theory it's a good idea because it gets us out from under the lockdown. And then she explains again why it's pretty scary. So Sky wanted to get somebody on real quick, somebody who would say, don't worry about the privacy aspect. So enter Matthew Newman from the company MLEX. Don't worry about it, says Matthew. It's all fine. Don't worry about the privacy.
One of the big worries is whether or not this will lead to mass surveillance. And now Google and Apple, they said that the data will be stored on the phone. It will use Bluetooth technology. It's not GPS-based technology, and that's very important because that prevents tracking of people's phones. It's also completely voluntary. So it's going to start out by people downloading the app, and then if they get any symptoms, they're supposed to upload their data to a central server, and that's also with their full consent. And this has been endorsed by the European Commission and the European Data Protection Supervisor.
But I mean, the voluntary idea, whilst of course that eases some concerns on the huge privacy issue here, it also means that it could be fairly ineffective. Surely, I mean, unless everyone is taking part in this, it's not going to make that much of a difference.
He's asked the wrong question there, Stephen Dixon. He said the voluntary aspect of it, and then he said, if it's voluntary, it won't work. What he should have said is, well, come on, Matthew, it'll be voluntary in name only. How will you be able to refuse it? And I'll come back to that in a minute.
Much of a difference.
Well, you've really put your finger on it. There was a study by Oxford University about this, and they said that you need 60%.
Yeah. So this guy goes on to say even more than he has already said, Matthew Newman, don't worry about the privacy aspect of it. You don't have to have the app. It's voluntary. That's what they'll say in the future when these things become more common. But they will put a caveat on the voluntary aspect. And that will be, it's voluntary, but here's a list of things that you can't do if you refuse. Do you understand? It's the same with the vaccine. You've got a lot of independent media people claiming that the vaccine for coronavirus is going to be mandated, that governments are going to introduce laws saying that you have to have it. They're not. They are, but not like that. They're going to say, we recommend strongly that you have it. Right? And again, here's a list of things you won't be able to do if you don't. That's how it starts. It won't from the outset be report to your nearest inoculation centre. That might come further down the road. I'm not saying it won't. But that won't be how it'll be rolled out initially. Initially, you're into social crediting. I reckon, and I don't do melodrama, I don't do fear porn, I never have. I reckon my days of going to watch live concerts in the UK have come to an end. I was musing on this yesterday afternoon, listening to some music at home. We had a bit of Ray Charles on the turntable. So we did. And some other great music from yesteryear. And I was pondering, now of course poor Ray has long since shuffled off this mortal coil. But I was thinking, musing to myself, you won't be going to see any more concerts, son. Tough shit, Paddy. I believe that's how it'll be rolled out. That's how they'll do it. You heard this guy, Bill Gates' mate, earlier on, that there are going to be further pandemics related to this one, waves of them. So of course they're going to say, we have vaccines. For each one, we have vaccines. And just go to your local NHS doctor and just get it. And if you don't, well, we won't allow you go to watch your football team, your basketball team, your netball team, rugby, forget it. Congregating, going out to gatherings locally, even the pub, you won't be allowed in. That's where it's going. So it's mandating it by other means. Won't be a case of two guys in military uniforms turning up to your house saying, right, you've got to come with us, you've got to have your injection. No, they don't need to be as blunt as that. And don't forget, as my learned friend in Connemara just said, about everybody watching the BBC and believing it, and as some of you just said on Twitter in the last 15 minutes, people believe it. Of course they believe it, so they will get the vaccine. They won't argue with it. The former editor of The Star, Dawn Neeson, got it in one. Anything to get us out from underneath the lockdown. So put an app on your phone that tracks every move you make. Morning, noon and night. And get the vaccine. And then you're okay. Big Brother is satisfied that you're okay to go outside and to get on with life as normal. But of course, life will never be the same again. And that's the whole purpose of this exercise. This hoax. Again, I'm not saying that there isn't a virus of some description causing people to become ill and causing some people to become gravely ill. I'm not saying that's not the case. Sure, there is a virus. That's what's happening. And I can't say any more than that. I don't know what else there is to say, really. I was going to play you some audio from Mervyn King, the Bank of England, former Bank of England governor, talking about the financial implications of the lockdown. I was going to play some audio from Keir Starmer, the new leader of the Labour Party, promising that if the Labour Party was in power, there wouldn't be a return to austerity. But I'm not going to do. I'm going to dispense with those clips. I'm going to love you and leave you to enjoy the rest of your Easter Sunday. This is where we are now. This is where we are. So do share that widely. The Bill Gates interview dissected, followed by his pal. Get people listening to it. I don't know what difference it'll make. The radio show is back on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. As you know, bank holiday here. Tomorrow is a bank holiday here in the UK. And we don't do radio. Well, I don't do radio on bank holiday Mondays. So I'm away tomorrow, back with you on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. I've got some amazing guests lined up for you next week. Nick Begich will be on the show. Spiro Skouras will be on the show. Lots of really interesting people will join me next week on the Richie Allen Radio Show. Until then, enjoy your bank holiday weekend, whatever's left of it, leaving you with some Jackson Browne.